right, Geoff Schwartz from Fox Sports is here. There's a dog hovering around him. What is the dog's name, Geoff Schwartz?
His name is Fo. He's our German Shepherd. We got him we had a dog for a long time, and then we had our kid and our daughter. We were moving a bunch, so we gave the dog to a friend. And I've always wanted one dog. It's the only dog I've ever wanted in life. It's a purebred, short-haired German Shepherd. He's like a classic looking, and that's what he is. And so my wife, randomly one Saturday, was like, "Hey, I've been looking at German Shepherds. There's a guy about an hour away that breeds them. I'm going to get him. Here you go. Here's your dog." So he is that, but he's like 16 months old, so he's still a puppy, and there's he's very energetic. Huh, buddy? You energetic, buddy? He does not like to lay in my office and let me work.
You have a pod with our buddy the Bear in 90 minutes. I just sent a photo to him. He is placing all sorts of bets all over America on random college football props, and we love him for that. But what we're going to do, we're going to talk a little ball. You played in the NFL. You obviously played at the University of Oregon. You missed out on the unlimited NIL that Phil Knight is providing, per Rick Neuheisel, when you were at Oregon. But we're talking about the NFL here, and the guys who are our preseason all-stars, the guys who have popped through 1 week of preseason, through the camps. We're starting to see now some of the real-life things that we only fantasized about in May and June and early July with some of these teams starting to see this. And you look at a guy like Caleb Williams. There's a lot of confirmation bias. Like Caleb Williams throws a screen that I think Justin Fields probably could have done once or twice in a preseason game. But because Bears fans want to believe, it becomes, oh, my God, look at this. So you see a little bit of that. I still believe in Caleb Williams. Obviously, I'm just poking fun at the preseason hype machine. But but we're gonna go through guys who we think, okay, this is exactly what we thought. This is what we wanted to see, and we can go any directions with it. Yeah. Let's start, Geoff, with your number one.
All right. So my number one was Zach Frazier, the center of Pittsburgh. We're going right there right now.
Bruce Feldman had him as his number one steal on when he was here after the draft in April, and now he's number one preseason All-Star.
He looked incredible. He was the second team. He was the second center. He might have had one drive with Fields, but he looked great. And here's the thing: I'm going to preface this whole preseason discussion with this: is people will say a lot of times, "Oh, they're playing against the backups." Yes, you're right. Caleb Williams might have been playing against the Bills' backup defense, right? I think it was the Bills, correct? But he should look good against the Bills' backup defense. That's a plus in my book. Zach Frazier playing against players that are not going to start and him playing well, it should be good because he should start in the NFL. So this idea that you can only judge preseason performances if it's ones versus ones or twos versus threes, like Joe Milton, for example, going all the way back to Thursday, he is better than the Panthers' third-string defense. He should look good if he's a good NFL player, right? So these guys should look good in these situations. And that doesn't mean that they're going to be All-Americans or All-Pros or whatever. It just tells you in week one, Zach Frazier played very, very good football. He should start for the Steelers at center. It's that simple. He looked like he should. He good power and zone blocking. He did good. He got to the second level. You want to see him finish a little bit better there. Pass protection was good, and now he'll be tested, I would imagine, against the ones moving forward. But I watched the film of all these young offensive linemen. I thought he did a really good job.
So a couple of things on that. I think that it's intriguing to see teams test guys. Okay, they work against the threes, the twos, the ones, and I saw this. I don't know if I talked about this in the show yet. I'm talking about another show, but they like this in Pittsburgh. They like this undrafted slot cornerback. And the day I was there, they just threw him to the Wolves and had him go against George Pickens in one-on-ones over and over and over again. And that's not because they want him to fail or anything. It's that they want to see how far he can get in week one. If you can handle George Pickens, and by the way, he couldn't in that particular practice, but it's like what you say. The point is he was probably dominating the twos, and it's like, okay, let's see if he can handle George Pickens. That's what training camp is for. And so the idea that Zach Frazier is handling the twos is a good sign.
Yeah, I agree. And so I think he did a great job. And I think I tweeted out a video of him, and I think a lot of people that weren't able to draft him were pretty upset about it. So that's I feel like a good way to look at whether or not that ended up being a good performance for him in week one. And we'll see more of him as we get he might have a new teammate too, a new wide receiver by the time
maybe Brandon Ayuk just wants to play with Zach Frazier. Have you thought about that?
I had not thought about that. Maybe that's what it is.
He heard. Maybe he saw your tweet.
Playing with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields is certainly a choice, but go get that money.
When you had your first preseason as a rookie, what did you,
buddy? Terrifying.
What surprised you about what you needed to learn?
Oh, well, look, okay. So I came from Oregon spread offense. I was in a 3-point stance 10 times in 3 years. We were in a spread offense, and I got to the NFL, and my stance was so horrific. I remember about October, my rookie year, on practice squad, Jordan Gross ended up being my mentor. He was fantastic. He pulled me aside. I was like, buddy, your stance sucks. Like, let's work on your stance. And fast forward even to now, Duke Manyweather, my buddy who trains all the offensive linemen, the first thing he does at any clinic he's at, any guy he trains, high school, middle school, college NFL, is stance. Get in the right stance, because that'll allow you to move in any direction you want. And the stance is unique. It doesn't have to be just my stance was different than my brother's stance. Like we just, it's all different, right? But it's what works best for you. And I wish I knew how to get into a stance. It would have helped me a lot, because I just would have played better early on. I'm pass protecting in a 3-point stance, because I didn't do it all in college. And that's really out of the NFL in general. But that's something that I had to learn quickly. And then I think looking back on it, the business of football, you just don't know as a young player. I think you would like to know that. Like, why am I not playing in the second preseason game?
Right.
Well, it's not your third string right tackle. And back then, first stringers played the first half of the second game, and then the second stringers played the second half. And then you realize by game 4, my agent told me, hey, they're not going to play because they want to hide you to be on the practice squad, which is something that, I don't know if it's done quite the same anymore, but that used to be done. They didn't play guys in the preseason because they wanted them to have no film and be on a practice squad. And so I wish I had known those things. But that's about it. Like, look, the physical nature of the game, the mental preparation of it, you learn as you go. You can't just really walk in, I think, and know exactly how to do that. But stance, man, my stance was so bad. It was inefficient. I couldn't move well. And I think it really hurt me early in my career.
When I was years ago, I was at a camp, a Rams camp. It was during the Jeff Fisher era, and Gil Brandt was there. And this is a badge of honor for Gil. But they used to joke, the Rams were joking, like, you don't want Gil coming to your camp, because Gil would go on the radio and ask the coach about these, like, undrafted rookies who they were trying to hide. And he'd always be like, oh, I can tell you're trying to hide that linebacker. And Jeff Fisher would be like, this isn't good. And like, it was just kind of funny, but I don't know. I don't know if they still necessarily do that. I don't know what's changed, but like, I just hear about it less. I still do think there's such thing. I believe they sometimes call it the Foxborough flu, where maybe a player takes a year on IR if there's not a real roster spot for him. That's been done before. I've seen it. Absolutely. I've heard about it. And so maybe it's more of that. I don't know. I have a question. Why? This is the dumbest football question I'll ask this year. Why do you need to be in a 3-point stance in the NFL? Why can't you just run the Oregon spread type offensive system at the NFL and play offensive line like that? And I'm sure there's a million reasons why, and I probably know why, but I just actually want to know the answer here.
Well, 3-point stance now is rare in the NFL. I feel like it's now 2-point stance. I mean, back then we ran the ball a lot, right? So like you had to be in a better leverage. I'm 6'7". Like your leverage for me was better in a 3-point stance. And then you wanted to have the same stance when you pass the ball, right? So that's sort of part of the reason why you wanted one stance. You can move in any direction, forward, backwards, left, right, sideways, whatever you had to do, pull, turn and pull, because you're so much of your offense was based on under center, right? Under center passing. But then in third down, you're allowed to be in 2-point. Now guys come in and Kevin, like they're not even a 3-point stance from the start. And some offenses still require it. I mean, Kansas City still has their tackles down. And they tell you, like, if you can be up in a 2-point stance, you got to be able to drive block in a 2-point stance, because you can't just choose to be in a 3-point stance only when you're drive blocking someone. So it's about consistency and I think power, right? Like there were times that I wanted to be in a 3-point stance. I felt it made me more powerful as a player. But you have to be consistent about when you did, and you figure out when the changeups were, right? Like I'm a 3-point stance. I know it's a pass. I can do it because I have the guard help or have a specific thing I can do. So that's why we did more 3-point tests. I think now, I mean, I would think that some of these guys coming in the NFL now are in a 3-point stance. What, goal line, 3rd and 1, tush push? I mean, what is Lane Johnson in a 3-point stance outside of the tush push?
Right.
Never, probably.
Never.
He's a freak show. He's a bad example. But in that offense, you don't have to be in a 3-point stance because he can do everything he needs to get done in a 2-point stance.
Hey, were you practicing? I know you were injured that year. Were you practicing during Cam Newton's first camp?
I was, yeah, for most of the camp, yeah.
So we talk about rookie phenomenons. Like, he had the best rookie season statistically basically ever. And like, you look at some of the numbers he put up in September and October, and they were unbelievable. I'm curious, we talk about like this guy's pro ready. Like, Cam Newton was freaking pro ready. Can you take me through like the camp and the milestones he hit in 2011 for everyone to understand, like, holy crap, this is not only coming, it's going to be significant.
Have you've seen Cam Newton in person? I know you have. But have you seen him in pads before? Yeah. He's a giant human. Like, that's the first thing you realize. Like, he is 6'5", 240. I mean, he is a huge player. I think part of it, Kevin, was like, we didn't know what he was going to be because the running part of his game, you don't really do in the preseason. Like, in game one, he threw for 400 yards anyway, so it wasn't like it was the running part of it. But I don't think we saw. I didn't see that 400-yard game happening in game one in Arizona. I mean, he had Steve Smith, like, 80-yard touchdown. I was sitting I had hip surgery. I was sitting in the bed with the continuous motion movement thing on my leg, watching him throw for 400 yards. But you can tell immediately if a guy has it. Now, from having it to like being elite is still work. But I feel like sometimes you can feel the other ways is simpler. Like, you can tell when guys immediately don't have it. Like, right away, you're like, out.
Right.
No chance. I'm not going to blow up some quarterbacks, but there were guys in Carolina I played with possibly the season before Cam Newton got there.
Sure.
Like, right away, you're like, don't have it, immediately no. Yeah. And then you try to build an offense around those guys, running the football, play action pass, screen, keep them healthy and sort of what you can do. But Cam came in right away.
You will not say, for instance, that Jimmy Clausen was drafted a year before Cam Newton in Carolina. You just won't say it.
I won't say it, but like,
you got too much respect.
It was clear, like, you just know immediately it's not going to work. Or Cam, you saw the physical ability immediately, but a lot of times, you know, the preseason is what it is, right? Like, it's different now. Again, I feel like I'm an old guy saying, like, you would game plan a little bit for week one, a little bit for week two. Week three was a full game plan week, and then game four was everyone off. You don't, sometimes you see the glimpses of it, but you don't get the full thing until you get to the regular season because you just do more, right? You have more options available to you. And then physically, you run the ball more with a quarterback like Cam Newton in week one than you would in the preseason. So you get that ability to see what he can do. But I don't think we saw that 400-yard game in him in the preseason. And we were very happy, by the way, to just have a different quarterback, right? Different offense. And it was by the way, it was a new offense too. I mean, we had brand new pieces all around. Steve had never played with him in a regular season game yet. And so I think Greg Olsen, he came in the next year, I think. I don't know if he was there that year either. So our tight end, I think, was still Jeff King, like, and Ben Hartsock was there. I mean, we didn't have the pieces he ended up playing with moving forward. No, Carolina, yeah, Greg was there that year. Okay, that's right. So Greg was there that year. So, like, we had to get all these guys together and play. But week one, man, I mean, he took off immediately. And I don't think he still gets credit for how good he was. I think
he definitely doesn't. He definitely doesn't.
He just doesn't.
He was a phenomenon who changed the game.
Oh yeah,
to change the game, change the sport. Yeah. Anyway, let's not get bogged down. By the way, Ken Dorsey's first job in the NFL was teaching Cam Newton NFL concepts because he was so unfamiliar with them.
Yeah, and that's part of it. Like the protections we had this. It's called key protection. It was sort of like. You just kind of make it up as you go. It wasn't my favorite protection. It was not. There weren't well-defined rules at times, so Ryan Khalil had to really help. I mean, that's the growing pains, right, of a young quarterback of like figuring out protections and whatnot, but then allowing Cam to unleash his physical potential. And when he put both together, he had the 2015 season, which was magical.
Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. All right, I'm going to get to my first guy, and it breaks my heart because it ties into some news today. J.J. McCarthy had knee soreness. Now he's going to have a meniscus cleanup, it sounds like. I don't know how serious that's going to be, but it sounds like week one he will not be the starter.
Yeah.
The throws he was making, Jeff, in the preseason. I know he had the pick. So did C.J. Stroud in his debut last year. He was pushing the ball. He was doing things that I thought he didn't need to do year one. Here's what I mean by that. I thought Kevin O'Connell was going to give him easy answers in the middle of the field, play action, wide open guys where I wanted him to start week 1. This is not 1994 anymore. You cannot develop a rookie quarterback sitting on the bench. There's just not enough reps in training camp. There's not enough reps during the week. There's not enough padded practice during the season. You got to get those guys playing NFL football. J.J. McCarthy has not played enough NFL football for him to sit on the bench. Other guys have thrown like 1,200 more passes in college than J.J. McCarthy. Okay? So, preseason debut, he's floating passes into zone defenses. Dan Orlovsky had an awesome breakdown on this. But then beyond that, he's hitting out-breaking routes. He was better than Sam Darnold. He looks better than Sam Darnold looks on an NFL field. Yeah. And so I thought he was going to fly into the starting position. Now we're going to have to do a month of Sam Darnold trutherism. It's driving me nuts. But J.J. McCarthy showed that as long as he's healthy this year, he is going to be a legitimate immediate impact guy in Minnesota. And with Kevin O'Connell as one of the best playbooks in football, I am all in on that guy.
He looked really good. He to the point of the things like he did different than college, which I think is important in this discussion. Like he looked like a different quarterback. Like he had improved. And I think the hardest part sometimes about scouting right now, Kevin, is because the college game is so different than the NFL, is what's going to translate over, right? Because we've seen Justin Herbert. This was the thing with Herbert. Even C.J. Stroud. It was like, do we get the Georgia game or the other 20 games? And I think it's just – and McCarthy looked like a different quarterback, but he was in Michigan because he had to do more, right? The offense is not going to be so dependent on the run game and play action pass like it was in Michigan. I mean, he's not going to have a game where they run the ball. They pass the ball one time in the second half. It's not going to happen. Yeah. And the knee injury, I'm curious how long they keep him out for, because you can certainly.
Well, it sounds like the report most recently was that once he goes in for surgery, that's when the doctor will be able to see if it's a full tear, or just something that can be repaired in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Yeah, because I would be cautious, obviously, with a young quarterback. Yeah. It just there's no reason to really rush that. I just would take as much time as you need to, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. But I think there's something there where Vikings fans should be happy that if J.J. McCarthy plays this time next year, or hopefully if he can play in November, it's going to look really good. I thought he looked like he belonged on an NFL field. And also just getting him, I think there's a value, Jeff, in getting him in, even if he's hurt, let's just put a silver lining on this, getting him in the building, working with Kevin O'Connell, understanding the mental part of it. It's not the worst thing in the world. You obviously want him to have those practice reps and live reps, understand the speed of the game, understand protections, but I still think there can be a year of development even if he's hurt.
Yes, absolutely. And even if you get the last 8 games of the season, like there's something, right? Yes. Because the thing about these young players, I want to stress too at times, is that obviously you want to play well all year round, but when you end year one, you want to feel that they're better than week one, right? Like you want to see the gradual improvement sort of every quarter of the season. And so even if you get McCarthy for 8 games, you get that sense by the end of year one, is he sort of our guy or not, right? Do we have to look somewhere else or sort of tailor, the way we do personnel to make sure that these things are handled, because he can't do that himself. And so, yeah, if you get back for 8 games and you feel great going to 2025, that should be the goal right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, who's your number 2?
So I'm going to put Bo Nix here, but not because he played great per se. Like his footwork at times was a little bit, a little bit hectic. Like but I'll tell you what I liked about the whole Bo Nix thing is that Sean Payne has very clearly designed an offense for him. And I think that's the big win, because look at what they did. Ton of RPOs, quick outs, empty protection, which he did a ton at Oregon, and they used his legs. Those are all things designed specifically for him, which is telling me, and why I think he's a winner this week, that he's a starting quarterback week 1, like immediately. I know he's starting the week 2 game. That was announced during the game, I believe. He would start week 2, and the offense looked like it not did at Oregon, but the sort of general feel of it. Again, empty protection. They did a ton of Oregon, which allows him to read the entire field immediately, throw the ball quickly. The RPOs, he didn't score on the play, but he kept the ball on a 3rd down. I think it was a 3rd down run on the RPO as well. Just sort of it looked tailored to him. Things he has to clean up, of course. Again, the footwork at times was a little bit much, a little bit hectic, a little bit wild. But I thought for the idea of there's a quarterback battle supposedly there, but the offense looked like it was already designed for him, which I thought was a big win for him. And he played well. It wasn't great, but he played well. Look, I could throw in a lot of the quarterbacks here. Jayden Daniels, by the way, changing a play call for a touchdown. He scored in that play, right? Was it a touchdown?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing. He's going to be my guy. So let's do this.
Okay.
Let's actually put a pin in that. Can you describe seeing Bo Nix's development at Oregon? And obviously, I think it was like the most accurate pass in the history of college football or something last year. Like year over year, because Jayden Daniels is the same bucket. Okay. So I talked to Davita Pritchard, who you remember from Pac-12 football years ago. In DC. And he said the thing about these transfer portal guys is they have so much data in their brain, and if they've gotten better year over year, it's because they're coachable. And they're in so many different offenses, so many different systems, with so many different teammates. As we know, Jayden Daniels scored a touchdown, threw a touchdown to Brandon Ayuk to beat Justin Herbert. That's how long he was playing college football, starting at Arizona State. It's just a different type. And if they're getting better at a handful of things year over year, it's because they know ball. Yeah. And I'm curious for Bo Nix in particular, what you saw during his rise.
Well, I saw sort of the confidence in his arm ability sort of grow over the years, right? And I think that he realized what he can and can't do. And I think Oregon did a great. He had two OCs, right? He had Kenny Dillingham and then Will Stein, who's still there.
Will Stein.
And they did a great job of tailoring sort of the game to him, which I think is an important part of this, right? A lot of empty, again, so you could read the field, throw the ball quickly. A lot of pro concepts within the passing game. They allowed him the RPO thing, sort of quick passes, but then they let him roll out, throw the ball deep, run a little bit. He didn't run a ton in Oregon. He could have done more of it, but they sort of make sure he's protected. I think you saw the confidence in sort of every given situation of just doing a little bit more until the end of his career when, look, they juiced it a little bit of the numbers. He's doing some of those little touch passes against Liberty to get to that 72.8%, whatever it was. But I think you just saw a very confident player. He did all the protections. His ability to change the play calls and get in the right situation was hugely impressive to me. Again, doing it with a second OC. They kept a lot of the Dillingham offense in there. I think he's a perfect fit for Sean Payne. I know people have said this is not anything that's kind of crazy, but his processing is pretty quick, and he will be able to get the ball out soon. I think there's still going to be questions about sort of intermediate, middle of the field accuracy. And, he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's very good at some throws. Again, he's good outside the numbers and good deep, but the intermediate sort of over the middle of the field, he's going to have to work on that.
All right, so Jayden Daniels, to me, I mentioned why I liked him so much, and what he got better at year over year was pushing the ball down the field, particularly over the middle of the field. Now, you saw it a little bit outside the numbers in the preseason game, which I was encouraged by, but his ability, the vertical seams, the inside, I forget what Davita Pritchard called it, slot fades, basically, which obviously he got way better at year over year at LSU. So you know that. Cliff Kingsbury knows that. They met with him to figure out what he's comfortable with, and they're going to run those plays. They're not going to say, hey, man, you're going to be a check down Charlie for your first year. That's not going to happen. They understand he can play immediately. And so I was encouraged to see the confidence, as you talked about with Bo Nix, the confidence that Jayden Daniels had in his arm against NFL concepts in week one of preseason. I thought that was awesome.
Dude, him changing the play call like that in the first preseason game is really a great sign. Like that's awesome. He saw what he wanted. He changed the play call. You don't change a lot of screens like that. You just sort of call them and run them. And for his ability to have that control of the offense in 2 weeks, I know there's, mini camp and whatnot, but that impressed me more than anything else. Again, he threw 3 passes. That was it, right? I think 3 passes, maybe less. But I love to hear him changing the play call for something that ended up being good. And all these rookies look pretty good, right? Penix did a good job, I thought. He played 5 drives. He played a lot of football. He looked good. You mentioned McCarthy. Caleb Williams looked good. The one question, obviously, is Drake May. I feel like if you're a Patriots fan right now, you're a little concerned, right? Considering everyone else.
He'll get there. I'm not concerned. I just think he played a very small amount of football. That Patriots defense is also really hard to practice against. They're really good. They complicate so many things. And I mentioned it. I asked your brother last week. I was like, what do these guys have to learn? And he was like, they when they get to the NFL level and talk about protections in particular, as you know, as well as anybody, it's really hard for college defenses to disguise what they're doing because of the way the hash marks are, because of the spread. Yeah. Like it is a completely different sport, man. Especially in the early weeks. Also, the athletes are so much better at the NFL level that the college guys, they have to creep up. They have to reveal their intentions seconds before the ball is snapped. You have so much data in your head going into the snap that does not exist in the NFL. I think it takes a while, and I would throw out the first couple weeks of training camp just from what I saw. Drake May did not look good in practice, but I don't think that's disqualifying. No, I
don't think it is either. I just think compared to other quarterbacks, you feel some sort of way. The biggest difference in the preseason over the years has been defenses and their pressures in preseason. Game 1 used to be vanilla as it came, man. Single backer pressures. We got will free safety now. We got corner pressures. I mean, the amount of things young offensive linemen and quarterbacks are seeing in the first game is more than they've ever seen before. Like, so I understand it being a tough transition for quarterbacks that maybe didn't see it in college to see it for the first time full speed in a preseason game.
Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words: Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, who's your last one?
Okay, this is a little bit off the beaten path, but I like it. Carson Steele, the running back for the Chiefs. He had 4 carries, I think nearly 8 yards a carry, but he rushed for 2,400 yards in 2 years in college. Like, legitimately a good running back in college. And the Chiefs use these players interchangeably. He's not Pacheco, obviously, but he is going to be a very productive player in that offense. And he looked really, really good. He can pass protect on third down. And I think he's going to be there. He'll end up being like their second running back as the season goes on.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, it's funny. I actually was just talking to someone about this about.
He can run, man.
With Pacheco. Yeah. With Pacheco, 7th round pick. I remember talking to someone there when I was there at camp, and they were like, man, Pacheco can play. He can play. And they gave him opportunities really quickly. They don't wait. That's the one thing about Andy Reid. He's not going to sit around with his seniority and say, hey, man, this guy, you know, even though Patrick Mahomes sat for an entire year, it's because they had Alex Smith, his most efficient passer in football, by the way. Best Alex Smith, the year Mahomes sat,
really good.
Alex Smith had the best deep passer rating on record, matched last year by CJ Stroud. So we think about CJ Stroud throwing bombs all the time. Yeah, buddy, Alex Smith already did it, pal.
And you've talked to Mitch about this. That whole year, I'd be texting Mitch like, yo, what to do with Patrick Mahomes? He's like, yeah, he looks good in practice, but it's practice. Like, it's scout team. Like, it doesn't mean it's the real thing. And the Chiefs were the 2 seed that season, I think. Like, it was like they were a bum team that needed Mahomes to play. Chiefs fans are still upset about that. It's crazy to me.
What, did he sat for a year?
Like,
that's hilarious.
Like they're like, we could have had a 4th Super Bowl. I mean, maybe, I guess, but
well, also, we didn't see his mistakes. We have such a different view of him because we didn't see him working it out. Like, he didn't have his 3-week Drake May period where we're like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, we saw him as a finished product, basically, because he had a year to learn under. I want to get this right. Mike Kafka was basically his personal coach.
Yeah.
Because Nagy or Peterson? No, Nagy. It was Nagy was coaching the offense. And then Mike Kafka was basically sitting with Mahomes, basically being like, all right, here's what you need to know. Here's what we did in practice, all that stuff. But he got like incredible attention. Reed gave him attention. Bieniemy was on that staff. There were a bunch of young guys who we could learn from. So like, it was a completely different equation. No one's ever going to get that kind of football education ever again. I mean, Jordan Love was kind of close, and it sounds like Aaron Rodgers kind of helped him, but still, it's a little bit different, and Mahomes is a better prospect than Jordan Love. Anyway, let's not go through that. My last one is Cam Kitchens, Miami Homer. I'm fine with that label. 3rd round pick. Couple things about him. All the Rams love him. He was the star and the featured guy on the Rams broadcast over the weekend. He is a ball hawk who is hitting hard, getting his hands on the ball, playing really well. He played safety next to a guy named James Williams, who looks really good with the Titans, but I didn't love Williams was out of position a lot, and didn't have a lot of discipline, and it was really hard to be next to him. So Kamren Kinchens was already in a tough spot. The other thing I think with Kinchens is he had 6 interceptions. His sophomore year was an All-American. He was phenomenal. Because of that, I think he got really into taking worse routes to the ball, frankly, because I think he tried to be more of a ball hawk than the play deserved given to him. But he always had great instincts. He always had he could always hit. He always knew where the play was going, and we're seeing it already with LA. I mean, I think that Geoff, maybe you have some insight into this. Do guys in general probably get more disciplined at the NFL level because they have to, right? I mean, like think about it. Like if I'm playing with a bunch of 10-year-olds in basketball, I'm going to try to play like Shaq, right? If I'm playing with a bunch of people my age, I'm going to try to get rid of the ball as quickly as possible. And if I'm playing with professional guys, I'm going to be so overwhelmed that I'm just going to set some screens. So it seems to me like some of those guys who are, whether that's James Williams or Kamren Kinchens, who try to be, almost Ed Reed types at the college level, they'll get into a system at the NFL and say, I'm just trying to make the team here.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to do that because there's structure. Yeah. Like in college football, you can out athlete guys all the time. Like that's something you can do. There's again, there are players that are exceptional athletes. You can't out athlete guys in the NFL outside of a couple of players, right? Like Tyreek Hill can out athlete guys like that. He can do that. He's that good of a player, but a lot of guys can't do that. So you have to fall into playing in the system. And you realize too, as a player, that playing within the system actually helps you play better. Like when you're supposed to be in a given snap, and your assignment can help you be a better, if you're a secondary player, right? Be in the right position for interception or for a deflected pass. You mentioned Miami. I was just there this past week. We went with the family. It was nice.
Great city.
Our mutual friend Chris Felica is good. He's a pessimistic Miami fan this season. I have him winning the ACC. Are you on the Miami Hurricane? Yeah. Are you flying the Hurricane flag for an ACC championship?
Yeah, I have them winning the ACC.
Good, so do I.
Probably dropping 1 to 2 games. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple.
Yeah, at Cal, they're losing at Cal. Like it's a perfect. I like Mario's my guy. But that's like a perfect crystal ball spot.
Maybe Friday night against Virginia Tech worries me. That's at home.
I'm never worried about like games that matter. It's the Georgia Tech thing, right? It's like that like it's like you lose like that game, but you win the games that matter if you're Miami.
I agree. They have talent. By the way, to close the loop on Kinchens, I think he was hurt when he tested. I think he was hurt all year. He was on a stretcher at one point and went to the hospital during Texas A&M. He was hurt all year, and then I think was probably still a little banged up during testing. That's why he tested poorly, dropped to the 3rd round. I love him. He's going to be a star in the NFL. Okay, on Miami, talent everywhere. Secondary really concerns me. But you can get away with it with that kind of defensive line. I think against most teams, if it was the SEC, and I'm saying, one day we're going to go against a random team. I mean, the thing about the SEC is you'll go up against, like I actually just saw a mock draft on the 33rd team where Kentucky had a defensive lineman who was a top 10 pick. Okay. And it's like, you're not getting that in the ACC, man. You're just not getting that. You're not going against, and this, I'm just using that as an example where like, in the SEC, you'll say, okay, well, we should probably win this game. Oh, by the way, there's 2 first-round picks on the offense for some reason. Like, you're just not getting that in the ACC. And in the SEC, you are getting that. In the Big Ten, you're usually not getting that, frankly. It's really only specific to the SEC because the talent is spread around. Yeah. You see, Mississippi State has some generational guy. Okay, whatever. In the ACC, having a unit like a bad secondary, and it's not bad, it's just unproven. The safeties are unproven. Mish Powell comes over from Washington. He played mostly nickel corner last year. He's going to be our safety this year. Jayden Davis is unproven safety because he was behind 2 NFL players last year. The linebackers are good, but like the corners are a real question. Okay. But you can get away with that if you're into the face, if Ruben Bain and Tyler Barron and Justin Scott or whomever are in the face of some random ACC quarterback every single week, you can get away with mediocre cornerback play. I think they beat Florida. They probably drop 1 ACC game and they win the ACC.
I think so too. I also think because Florida State takes a step back. They lose so many starters. And I'm not a DJU fan. I think he's just okay as a quarterback. Clemson seems to be taking a little bit of a step back. What are they? As Dabo refuses to adapt to the new college football landscape, and offensively, they continue to have question marks about the efficiency of that offense. So I think like the conference isn't great either, and that's part of why I like Miami. And again, they have built their team the way you have to, which is in the high school recruiting in the trenches. They've added some pieces, obviously, but what Cristobal and Maribel have done on the offensive line is great. And Cam Ward can be really good if they just don't Justin Herbert him. Like, just let him be himself, use his legs, and be the athletic
don't fumble
freak that he can. Yeah, he fumbles the ball. He holds the ball in the pocket like a loaf of bread. That he has to work on that as well. But
the line will be better to help.
Yes.
But the one thing about what you just said about the high school recruiting, I'm surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be. I'm surprised that preseason Florida State is considered a more chalk pick than Clemson. Only because year after year, Clemson has really good recruiting classes. So there's a floor there and a standard there that we know what they're going to be. They don't use the portal enough to win the national championship. I understand that. But they use the portal enough to win the ACC.
Yeah.
They almost beat Florida State last year. With the game went to overtime, was kind of a coin flip, whatever. But for me, the portal, Mike Norvell's used the portal in an amazing way. But at some point, you miss on 3 of those guys of the 5 or 6 you take, 7, 8, whatever you take every year to have big contributors, big roles. If you miss on 3 of those guys, you've got real problems. You don't have depth behind it, all of that stuff. And so that to me is the biggest thing. Clemson is going to have, at minimum, a bunch of really good 4-stars who are big enough and strong enough and fast enough. And that's why I'm surprised how much we're discounting Clemson against Florida State in the rankings and the projections and stuff.
Well,
Miami is like a combination of those two, but they've never proven it. So I'm not mad in any way that they're ranked 3rd in the ACC.
I think some of the Clemson stuff is because you're right. They don't do the portal, but they also just don't develop as well as they used to. I find this always shocking. Like with the offenses Clemson has had, I'm looking at it right now. They have not produced, I think John Simpson's probably the best one, like NFL offensive lineman. Like they just, like, it's shocking. Think about the Deshaun Watson offenses, the Trevor Lawrence offenses, even DJU at some points. They don't develop that position very well. And they don't have they don't have a Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson anymore. Where Florida State and Norvell, wherever he's been, he had good offensive line at Memphis, good offensive line at Florida State. Not great, but good, right? Their offensive line coach is good there as well. And I think there's more trust that Norvell can replace the starters that they lost. They lost a ton of them with the players he's recruited, where Dabo hasn't done it quite the same since he won those championships.
Man, I'm looking at Clemson guys in the NFL. It is all defenders and skill guys.
It's wild. I mean, I just got off a call with the Joe Moore Award group as we prepare for the season. And it always surprises me when I think about that award in Clemson, because for how good they have been, they've rarely been brought up in our award, because their offensive line has not been as good as their quarterbacks and their other pieces on the offense. They have running backs in the NFL, quarterbacks, wide receivers, but offensive line, it's just not been a position they have done as well at.
Man, I'm looking at it right now. Jackson Carman, who's working his way out of the league, was a 2nd-round pick at guard. Wow.
Shocking.
I did not expect this to become a Clemson offensive line podcast, but I'm glad it did. Yeah. Geoff Schwartz, where can we find you this week, man?
Fox Sports. You can just go to my Twitter at Geoff Schwartz as well. All my stuff is on there. Excited for, I feel like a little letdown. No preseason games for like 3 days. I need my preseason action, buddy. It's a bummer.
You can just place more college football bets.
I will.
All right, buddy. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.